and don'ts of diversity hiring. Interesting, right? The moment you talk about the do's and don'ts, you think, okay, what can it be when it comes to, is it just, certain do's and don'ts about PWD? Or is it just about a career comeback program that usually organizations focus on? So let's hear what our speakers have got to say, our leaders have got to say. I would now invite Ms. Avantika Susan Nigam, Director and Head HR, PepsiCo Hyderabad, and Ms. Bhavna Kumar, HR Infrastructure India, Global Business Partner Technology Centers, India, Russia, Romania, and USA, Deutsche Bank, to take over. Over to you, ladies, requesting our leaders to please take over. Ms. Nigam and Ms. Kumar.
Hi, thank you so much for having us. Really appreciate the opportunity to come and speak with all of you. And I'm really looking forward to the conversation with Avantika. We've kind of connected before, and a topic like diversity hiring is something I think that's very close to both of our hearts. And I think at the very outset, right, I just want to really talk about my personal opinion about what I believe diversity really means. Because like you said, Ankita, I think diversity is so much more than just beyond gender diversity and the various compartments into which we kind of sometimes silo it into. For me, diversity really means acknowledging and celebrating the right to really be your true self, be it at the workplace, be it anywhere, and not having to hide who you truly are. It's really about, breaking biases, encouraging employees to really speak up and put their own welfare first. And I think at Deutsche Bank, despite the terrible, terrible pandemic, that situation that we've been in, we've really tried to ensure that the focus on key deliverables hasn't really shifted. And D&I is one of those very key focus areas. We don't refer to it as an agenda. We don't refer to it as a project, because those seem to somewhere intrinsically imply an end date. But this is really a continuous focus, and the need to really look at driving that strategic agenda and the change is absolutely the need of the hour, no matter what the circumstances are. And linked to that is where we ensure that all of our people policies are truly inclusive, and they go beyond the conventional definitions of family, of a spousal relationship and things like that. So that's really what we believe diversity to really mean for us. But Avantika, would you like to give a quick intro before we jump into all the questions we've got for ourselves?
Absolutely, yes. Lovely to be on this panel. Lovely to be speaking with you today, Bhavna. And like you rightly said, this is such an important topic. But honestly, for me, it's been a journey to really start truly appreciating and comprehending what diversity, inclusion, and equity really mean, and the impact that they can have at the workplace. PepsiCo is a company that's been, committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion for decades now. In fact, we have, and I have the proud privilege of working in a company where we had one of the first Black vice presidents in a leading MNC organization way back in the 1960s. Indra Nooyi was a global CEO of a US-based MNC. Way back as well, nearly 2 decades ago. So. Really, really proud of the history and heritage. But honestly, for me personally, and you've covered a lot about what diversity is, and the many shapes and forms, etc. I think sometimes when you come from a background where you may not have faced bias, and you may have faced equal opportunity just because your family was like that, and your upbringing was like that, it's easy to not really truly recognize how this can play out for many individuals that we work with, and how it plays out in society. So honestly, for me, and I have to be most humble about this, it has been, an eye-opening journey over the last, I think, 5 or 6 years, where, I have truly come to appreciate it much, much better. I'm still on my journey, and that therefore this topic means so much to me at a personal level, as well as, at an organizational level to PepsiCo. So with that, I think, Bhavna, I think it's a great, segue into us starting our conversation. And I'd really like to understand, how you have created a, work environment where everyone can be authentic, feel a sense of belonging, and how does that really help you drive, business results in Deutsche Bank?
Thanks. I think the bit about driving business results is really the key, because otherwise one of the frequent pitfalls that we see, and I'm sure we'll talk about it later, is you don't want to get caught up in the gimmick of it all, or just doing tick box activities just for the sake of being present. So at Deutsche Bank, the importance of diversity is really noticed at the very top of the house. So we actually have a management board diversity goal of having 35 by 25. So having 35% of our senior leadership to be gender diversity by the year 2025. Like I said, diversity isn't just about gender diversity. So we've also joined the Valuable 500 movement, and we have management board sponsorship for that, which is really a global initiative to put disability inclusion on the agenda for business leaders. And we're committed toward driving that. And, this particular event that we are here in today, of course, we know there is a parallel job fair running as well. And we're really looking forward to interacting with and exploring partnership opportunities with as many candidates as we possibly can across the entire spectrum of diversity, because we truly are committed to kind of enabling individuals to be the best version of themselves. And I think at Deutsche Bank, we have an extremely active ally network as well. So we've got 400 allies, as we call ourselves, or ambassadors, and we continue to build that. So we're not just happy to have the 400, but in every interaction that we have across the level, be it with new joinees, be it with colleagues such as yourselves, or all the folk who are listening into us, if we're able to convert or just open up someone's mind, even one person, for me, that's a day well gone well, to get people to just appreciate what that means and how that works out. We've taken part in several job fairs, such as the Rise Hiring Fair, this one today, various pieces of work just to kind of build that awareness in people's minds as well, in terms of what does it really mean? Because a diverse organization has statistically proven to be significantly more successful in terms of delivering on the bottom line as well. So the numbers are there to speak for in terms of, what do diverse organizations achieve. And we're constantly working towards updating our policies. We've recently been awarded a silver notification by the India Workplace Index. We've got 2 years in a row Avatar recognitions for best place for women to work, fingers crossed for 3rd year in a row. So it's all happening with a very direct business outcome in mind to kind of get that going and to have that done. So Avantika, I'd be very keen to actually understand from you at PepsiCo in terms of, you talked about Indra Nooyi coming in, having the first Black senior leader coming in. So in your opinion, how do you see diversity in the workplace really having evolved?
Great question. I truly believe that diversity, in the workplace is a reflection of what's happening in society, what's happening, around us. And the conversation around diversity has been around, for decades now, whether it's on gender, whether it's on race, sexual preferences, people with disabilities, even age or backgrounds, right? It's been talked about, for a very long time. And I think there is a lot of effort that governments are playing, and I'll just come to workplaces in a bit, but governments are playing in terms of creating the right policy structure, the right, acts and laws, etc., that companies need to follow. Having said that, I think as I see it evolving in the workplace, I clearly see that there are some leading organizations like yours and mine who are really taking this as a business imperative, really taking it very, very seriously, and putting their money where their mouths are, right? But I think there is a vast majority that is still at earlier stages in this evolution, we, I think, started out maybe a couple of decades ago, where there was a lot of conversation around sexual harassment and prevention of sexual harassment, etc. And a lot of companies are still, at that stage where they're just making sure that they're compliant with the laws. Now, maternity benefits have improved significantly, in the country. There are creche benefits to support women at the workplace, etc. But it's really not gone to a stage where, reporting or governance requires us to be compliant on, any kind of diverse metrics. I think there I really see organizations that are leading the pack, that are really taking rapid strides towards making sure that not only are they compliant, but they're holding themselves up to a much higher standard. In PepsiCo as well, we have committed to having 50% women in management roles by 2025, and we've actually taken great steps towards it. I'm very, very proud to speak about the part of the company that I represent, which is the Global Business Services Center in Hyderabad. And we are at 44% gender diversity right now across levels. A third of our managers and leaders are female, and we are really taking steps not only on gender but also on the LGBTQ agenda, and making sure that we continue to educate our employees and leaders around unconscious bias, and really scrutinizing our policies and processes to make sure that along the entire value chain, not just around hiring, but around developing, around mentoring, and around promoting both our males and females, and all kinds of diverse elements that we have in the organization, that they're seeing an environment of equal opportunities. So I do see a lot of great progress happening. I think similar to what you said, that we have a huge focus on making this employee-led. I think one of the things that I felt very proud of in an onboarding session, I think a year and a half ago, was, when I asked our new hires, do you have any questions for me? And this was a time when we weren't working virtually. And someone actually walked up to me and said, what is your stand on hiring from the LGBTQ community? And I was just so happy that that question's coming from someone who is joining us. And this is not an HR agenda, but this is something that, employees are really becoming more aware of and asking about. So I think, we ourselves also have multiple employee resource groups. We've got a women's inclusion network that looks, that's extremely active, that looks at creating a sense of community around, for the women at the workplace. We've got another ERG, which we call Men Advocating Real Change. It's called MARC, and we have visible male allies for their female counterparts, that are there. They conduct sessions as well. Oftentimes, WIN and MARC work together to conduct programs, and then we see both men and women participate in equal numbers, because they see this as not as something that's being done just for the women. Similarly, we have an ERG for our LGBTQ community, and we have another ERG that's looking specifically into development of women in mid-management roles, and it's allied to the global movement on Million Women Mentors. So these are some of the the ERGs that I feel particularly proud of. We also have a CSR ERG, and each of these ERGs has between 20 to 50 employees that are actually working on the content, etc. It's not HR driving it; they're running it, themselves. And the CSR ERG specifically is looking at a lot of effort around increasing women in STEM careers, starting from school to colleges, etc. So they're actually spending volunteer hours in and bringing in others to spend volunteer hours in teaching, at various schools and colleges to improve that entry-level pipeline of both men and women in the careers that we or in the specializations that we need at the company. So these are just some of the things that I think are going on, and I know it's not just in PepsiCo, but there are many organizations that are taking those steps forward and helping us change as a community, as a society, on diversity and inclusion as a concept. So with that, I think I'd love to ask you, Bhavna, one of the key steps in improving gender diversity or diversity overall is hiring, because if you hire right, then you sort of set things right from the beginning, but if you don't, then it becomes increasingly difficult. So tell me, what kind of trends are you seeing in that space, specifically around areas and watchouts what are some of the pitfalls that companies should avoid, and what are some of the best practices you're seeing in that space?
I think that's a really good one, because it's so easy for organizations who are in this journey of becoming truly diverse and inclusive employers of choice today to kind of fall into this trap of saying, okay, everyone's talking about diversity, great, let me do it as well. Or there's a concept that I recently learned, I will confess, called rainbow washing, right, which is basically, and I'm sure I'm going to not explain it as well as I should, but I'll try, which is basically talking about a tokenism alignment to the LGBTQI cause, right? And if you would have noticed, in the month of June, you would have seen a whole lot of stuff happening on that, saying, I support this and support Ally, and I'm this and I'm that. But the minute the clock turned into 1st of July, all those comms kind of stopped, right? And that, for me, as an HR person and as an advocate for diversity and inclusion, is the biggest issue that we see with diversity and inclusion. And even when we do hiring, is whatever organizations choose to do, it needs to be a thought through, well-rounded, holistic plan. Doing it as a gimmick, as a one-off, is just not sustainable. The risks or the downsides of doing that are significantly higher, because what you would do in that scenario is you're doing a one-off event. You're probably hiring, and I'm just going to give a hypothetical, 3 women or 2 people who are people with disabilities or any of those things. You've not created an infrastructural environment which is conducive for them to be successful. You're setting them up to fail then in your organization. And then you wonder why they would leave within a year of joining. And then you say, see, it just doesn't work because you can't get these folk in the organization and it's so tough to get them to stay. And then your business folk kind of come in and say, look, I'm not going to spend that extra time waiting for you to get me profiles. It becomes this absolutely awful, vicious circle. So the first thing I would say is avoid the tokenism, avoid labels. I mean, one of the other things that I have to consciously remind myself and my team as well is that when we talk about diversity and inclusion, or we participate in job fairs, or we're hiring folk in various categories of diversity, let's not put that label on them. My identifier is my name. My identifier is not my gender or my orientation or where I'm from. My that's my identity, is what I bring to the table as a professional. Just like any other person, just because I happen to fall into one of these buckets that as an organization we sometimes create, that cannot be one's identity. And again, let's try and not bracket people in. And that's something I'm very, very passionate about. So I've had quite a few conversations with some of my business folk and my team members as well to say, let's not do that, right? And I think the most important piece, right, is don't hire and forget people. So like I said, when we're hiring people who happen to have any of these special needs or requirements or in a diversity category, don't just hire them and leave them to kind of find their way. There needs to be an ecosystem. If, for example, I'm hiring someone who's visually impaired, I need to ensure that my organization has the required physical infrastructure and technological infrastructure on day one for the individual. And it's perfectly okay when I'm interviewing a candidate to ask them, are there any specific infrastructural needs you would have in order to help you be successful at your job? Understand what that is. Yes, it's an additional 20 minutes possibly of a conversation, and an additional 2 hours you need to speak with your tech team to get JAWS installed as a default software. It's money well spent. It's time very well spent for us to do. So ensure that you have a support system. So, Avantika, you talked about employee resource groups. So critical to have employee resource groups in place, which kind of help individuals find cohesion or find like-minded people who they could speak with, because not everyone could necessarily be comfortable reaching out to HR or their manager to ask questions which they may think may not be intelligent questions and fear of being judged. So having employee resource groups and having the employee resource groups of various types available for individuals to be able to reach out to, I think is hugely critical. And it's just a piece of advice that I thought we could keep in mind. And I love the bits that you were talking about on diversity evolving in the workspace, Avantika. And I think one of the bits was, you talked about getting to the front line or the entry level for women kind of really put in place to get women in at the right levels in. And one of the things I just wanted to share in Deutsche Bank was we've also got various groups in place. For example, we have women in technology, women in finance, where again, it's by women for women, and also looking at, trying to help women get into, for example, in technology, finding a woman at a senior leadership position in technology is like gold dust. So again, how are we not just eating into a very limited pie, but how are we making that pie larger itself by building that capability for people? So in association with an organization called Knowledgy, we've actually created a DB Women Accelerator program to help women who are interested in software development to kind of get into that space, get learning in there. We've even got some things like mentorings in place, which is a one-to-many mentoring group for people to be aware of how you can really position yourself, showcase yourself, build those very, very important networks, which sometimes it's difficult for people to do. I was talking about technology, and Deutsche Bank, of course, being a fintech, as we like to refer to ourselves, I was kind of keen to understand, Avantika, based on your experiences, how do you think organizations could really look at leveraging technology more in strengthening their diversity hiring process?
Fantastic question. Bhavna, I think technology is just so exciting, in terms of everything that it brings to us. It brings in these data-driven insights and scalable solutions that we didn't have access to even 10 years ago. So I really feel that, at the very start level, I think the technology is changing the game everywhere. Some of the things that I have noticed that are, very, very interesting, and we are using them very effectively in PepsiCo from a technology standpoint is the first is, using AI effectively to reduce unconscious bias. And that could be in your job portal, to make sure that JDs are not, exclusive. So there are various words, etc., that you could use in a job description that could make it more male, attractive to male candidates or female candidates, or exclusive to either, or be ageist, or or be differentiating against people from different social backgrounds. And so therefore, I think that's the first one. I think the other is using it just for shortlisting. We've got these interesting tools that have come in where, and I'm sure you as well, get lots and lots of applicants for every single role. And it then becomes very difficult to remove bias from the process, right? Because how do you shortlist from 2,000 CVs? And so I think some of this is really helping us in terms of technology, just bringing out, based on the criteria we put in, what are the top 5 resumes that you have? And technology doesn't care what gender you come from or which part of the country you come from, etc. And so it really does play a huge role in increasing diverse representation in the CVs that come up in the process of shortlisting. I think online hiring, it's very basic, but it's something that has really, again, opened up so much more opportunity for candidates who would not have known about the opportunities that our companies present. And for us to also reach out to a much wider audience. I'm wondering, is there some sort of technological lag that you're seeing from my side?
It's a little bit, you're freezing in little bits and
bobs. So really sorry to you and to the audience, but technology can play games with us sometimes as well. All right, so then I think the other one that I think is really helping is online assessments. Whenever you have assessments baked into a process, whether it's for leadership, whether it's for junior level roles, etc. I think I froze again, but I'm hoping I'm back. So, I think that's playing a big role for us. We have leadership assessments for mid-managers, senior managers, and leaders. And then we have technological assessments at different levels. Again, they bring out the candidates that are most qualified as opposed to the candidates that, a recruiter might shortlist. Again, I think for development, for recognition, we're using technology really effectively, because it really helps us track, what our succession pipelines look like, what are the strengths and opportunities both in men and women, and generally the whole population. And we're able to very quickly pick up, if there is a segment where we are seeing, males getting promoted more than females, or one particular group getting excluded for some reason or the other. And we're very quickly able to intervene. And it's while it could be a lag indicator, it's also a lead indicator, right? When it starts to just dip a little bit, if you step in and bring in the right interventions, you can prevent it from worsening. So I'm really excited about everything that technology is opening to all of us. And I think some of our HR processes, recruitment especially, is mass hiring more than others. It is really making a massive impact. Awesome. So with that, and I know we're nearly at the end of our time. So I want to just get your and pitch in a little bit on this, and maybe close with this question. Now, what's a perfect world in your view, as far as diversity, equity, and inclusion is concerned?
I think for me, utopia would be where we don't have to track, where you don't have targets for diversity, where you don't have to be talking about this is what diversity means for us, because it's just so embedded and it's so core to who we are and what we do as individuals that it's just not talked about as a standalone item. You're not having to single things out, having role models and ambassadors across across the entire organization, across levels of seniority, where the definition, and just in conclusion, right, I think just like we've seen the definition of diversity probably in the last 10 years evolve from not just about women to so much more. I imagine in the next 10 years, it'll probably evolve into something that we probably can't even imagine at this point in time. So for me, it would really be, it just evolves into a normal BAU for us of normal ways of working, no regular conversations without having to have focused, groups or agendas and things about that. For me, that would be the dream.
I think I can't agree more. When we don't need social movements like Me Too and Black Lives Matter and Time's Up, and we actually start seeing naturally, diverse workplaces where you don't have to make any effort towards it, but it's something really ingrained in our systems. I think that would definitely be a utopian world. What a lovely note to end on. We're bang on time, and I think I'll hand over back to Ankita to take the next session forward.